what I want to do is to talk about a couple of topics that are related to what we understand usually as social economy. Now, the social economy is not as such defined, meaning that my lecture will be split in a couple of different sections. And the overall heading had been society, social economics, social economy, and social equality. Social equality, I will come back later to this and explain this. So there are 9 sections overall. The one is looking at what is actually society about, then to present this approach of social equality, and look in the third step at production, in a wider concept of production, not only as production of goods. Fourth, something that looks probably like a mysterium, the triangularization of the world. Fifth, the diversification of the society. Sixth, the question of defining what interest is actually about. Seventh, to look at the current European debate, and looking then in the 8th step on the question of how to resist obstacles for the social economy. Finally, possibly looking in the 9th step on corporate social responsibility, a currently majorly discussed concept. So the first point, society. What is actually society? Usually seen as just an amalgamation of individuals. But at the same time, if I say usually seen as, it means that I would put some question mark behind that. What we have to look at is just people coming together, people being together and acting together. But this is first and foremost a rather unknown concept, and there are different approaches to it. If we just take people being together, looking at them. A very common concept in this context is the Homo Economicus, and another very common concept is probably the only Greek work for many people, the Zoon Politikon. Coming back to Aristotle, the first, the Homo Economicus, being largely connected to Adam Smith as one of the founding fathers of modern economics. If we go back just up to the Renaissance, possibly, and then later the Enlightenment, leaving the ancient history is more or less out for this moment, we find that with the Renaissance and later with the Enlightenment, actually a major shift took place. And this was a shift towards individualism, the individualization of society. We usually talk today about it. We say today we find individualism, we find hedonism, and we do not find a society as such. The shift goes back actually to the Renaissance, and even if it is very much an ideological thing at the surface, what actually happens is that a major shift took place in terms of the economy of society. If we try to keep it short, we find a change that previous societies had been societies that had been based on production. Production was the core of everyday's life, and later on, of course, products had been exchanged. But the starting point of defining positions as well had been in the area of production. We find then a shift. Look at the Medici, look at the Fuggers in Germany, the first in Italy at the time. It had been trading capital, it had been finance capitalism, we would say today, and this defined furthermore societies and how they kept together. I mentioned Enlightenment as part of the overall changing process, of the historical process, and what actually took place there was the idea of we are dealing with individuals. Individuals produce not in a common setting, but they produce on their own, and the value of what they produce is actually realized then on the market as part of the process of exchange. Adam Smith said this: we are dealing with individuals pursuing their own interest, their individual interest, and only an invisible hand brings it together afterwards to be there for the well-being of all, for the wealth of nations. It was an invisible hand, and it was a process that was not steered, and it was a society of individuals competing with each other. This was a decisive progress on the one hand, meaning that we had been looking at individuals being responsible for themselves, being free in many regards, being free having as well their own property. Property was one of the major things that people obtained as a right. Locke, for instance, was pointing on this. Now, at the same time, it meant if there are only individuals exchanging on the market, what can we do? Does it mean the end of society? Before, we have had structured societies, we have had the noble class, we have had the peasants, we have had the producers, the tradespeople, the craftspeople, and we have had even non-people, in inverted commas, the slaves. But in one way or another, they had been welded together. They had been, in several cases as well, forced together. And so far, this term of being welded together fits quite smoothly there. So, having no society, having only individuals living together, there was the need for something. On the one hand, we find the economic solution, building up enterprises, producing, building up chains, trading, and having still individuals that had been bound together by economic processes only. But a society is more, obviously, more than just people producing. What is it? The common answer at the time, look at Locke, look at Hobbes, look at Rousseau, in different countries, following different traditions, had been different kinds of social contracts. People agreeing on the ways of how they wanted to be together, people building up what we know from today, actually literally today in terms of this year. Ireland just concluded the second referendum, now concluding a treaty on the European Union. It's still open, it's not finally ratified, but it is another kind of social contract where people agree in one way or another, this is how we define ourselves as society. You have the definition of rights there, you have the definition of obligations, and you have the definition of borders. A social contract. You have it based on the idea of people are competing and there is a war of everybody against everybody else. So we have to look there on measures to justify or to look for peace, to secure peace. Or we have this idea of everybody should be as free as possible and should be able to live to this extent as individual, that it's possible just without any interference of the state. The Leviathan on the one hand and the laissez-faire understanding on the other hand. Hobbes on the one hand and Smith on the other hand. One important point of the time was thinking that property, individual property, property of individuals, is one of the most important things that makes it possible for these individuals to compete on the market. Now, what I want to propose is that there is a certain danger with this. In any case of these social contracts, we find an ongoing meaning of morals. Adam Smith is well known for his book on the wealth of nations, but at the same time, he is known for his work on moral principles. We find this through all areas of theories of the time, and we find in all cases a certain split of here is the economy and there is the social being. Here is the economy in terms of producing and exchanging goods, and there are people living together and trying to be good to each other. I know that this is somewhat questioned and that people say, other people, colleagues say, with good reasons, that actually the Enlightenment meant stepping back from morals and looking for other standards, for non-moral standards. I would contest that and say it was the ongoing question of from where do we actually get the moral and ethical grounds for our behavior. And with this I will close this first section, defining what we as social quality people, it's a foundation based in The Hague currently, understand as the social. It is necessary to define the social as such, not to say there is something we don't know what it is and we just deal with it. It's something out there in ethical terms and it is based on morals, but at the end of the day we don't know, God knows, what morals is about. We have to define in the process of being together what actually it is that keeps us together. The social we understand as the outcome of the interaction between people. It's the first point. Interaction between people, they are together, they have to be together, and they depend on each other. These people are constituted as actors, be it conscious actors or non-conscious actors, but they are acting. They are not behaving simply following some instincts, but they are constituted as actors. And it is the interaction between these people as actors and their environment. The natural environment, of course. It makes a difference if you are in the sea area or in the countryside. It makes a difference if you have huge amount of resources available or not. It's a natural environment, and it is the interaction as well between the constructed environment. Institutions, buildings, networks like infrastructure, all this matters, and it is all part of this social interaction. So the social as the outcome of the interaction between people constituted as actors and their constructed and natural environment. Now this definition goes on. With this in mind, its subject matter refers to people's productive and reproductive relationships. In other words, the constitutive interdependency between processes of self-realization and processes of the formation of collective identities. And then it is the condition for the social realized by the interactions of actors being, with their self-referential capacity, competent to act. It is very important to keep this in mind. The competence to act, not just to behave, and their framing structure which translates immediately into the context of human relationships. I would suggest that this definition is then there available as well in written form. And I want to conclude here with the first section on society and what it is actually about.